Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another EU Made Simple live stream. And my God, it has been not even, well, actually 2 days, 3 days with another election live stream. We've been talking about elections going around Europe for many days now. And I think this week is finally the one that's going to make sure the election season is going to come to an end, even though there's more elections on its way, especially in the United States. Very exciting stuff. I would like to see if everything is working, all the audio is working, how people are feeling before we move on to our guest. Let's see, we already have a few people chatting, talking about not my motherland again. It's the same old dead end. Something big should happen for the vote to go in a better direction, says Ice. We need a new player on the stage, but hopefully not Radev, says Taryn. Yeah, exciting, says Paul from Chicago. Welcome, Pablo. Hello, Elliot. Good to see you. Handsome man. You're making me blush, Pablo. Thank you very much. So, yeah, we've got quite a few people in here, which is very exciting. All right. Welcome, everybody. We have a lot to talk about today, as most of at least the Bulgarians in chat will know, but the other viewers might know as well, is that Bulgaria really loves having elections. So we are having the 7th one, if I'm not mistaken, since 2020, or like since 2021, you could say even, which is quite incredible that we've had so many elections, where you would assume that most countries, most democracies might have 7 elections in like the span of 2 decades. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the polls, definitely always about the polls, or polls. We have some exit polls as well, although no cool graph, unfortunately. We have this DW article already spoiling a bit of what we're going to be talking about, the 27% of the vote. PP, I see a lot of PPDB voters in chat. Make sure to let yourselves known if you're a PPDB voter. Apparently that is a very, very represented group in the chat. Very interesting. 15% for the Revival party, and 13. Oh no, that was 13%. My bad. And PPDB 15. Okay. Anyways, Nick Alexandrov says RE is strong in this channel. I'm a GERB voter, but hope we can be over this before Radev makes a party. Then it's all over for all of us. All right, so we have some different political representation, which is very interesting. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to be doing this alone, luckily, because even though I can read many articles, I am not Bulgarian myself, and I'm by no means an expert. So I would like to introduce to you the guest of tonight, Martin. Welcome, Martin Stefanov from EU&U. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening. I'm really happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone, even though I can't see you. I'm Martin Stefanov, as he said. I am indeed from Bulgaria. And even though I'm 24, I've already voted 8 times. So I have some information on voting in Bulgaria.
Very impressive.
Yeah. I'm
Good.
part of EU&U, as you said. Yep. I've been there for 3 years. And I like to call myself a cartographer, which sounds cooler than data visualization, but that's what I do, basically.
Okay, understood. Well, incredible stuff. So I think before, what would be the smart thing? But I think before we go into all of the, let's say, meat and potatoes of the current exit polls, I would like to ask, how in the world did we get here? How did we get to a 7th election in 3 years? Because the only thing that I, as an outsider, remember is I think protests happening in 2020 and maybe throughout the course of 2020, and after that, at least in the media in the Netherlands, it all fell off. So could you please take us a bit through the recent history of these elections?
Yeah, of course. We like to joke at this point that we're the most democratic country because we held the most elections in the world in the shortest period of time. The reality is that there were a couple of times where we came very close to actually having a functional government, or we even did for some time. But then due to this or that disagreement between parties, things fell apart. So now we're here, down from 50%, I think, activity. The start of this whole charade to 33 the last time, and now up again to a whopping 36% or so activity.
Yeah. So, what was the catalyst, so to say, for these, let's say, less than stable governments? Was there one point that really made it all kick off, this series of instability, or was it just every single time they couldn't form it because of different reasons?
I think it all really started with this new obsession with bringing in new parties, because for a while there was the status quo parties, and every time you voted, you knew more or less it's gonna be the same 3 or 4 parties in the top 3, and then start in the past 4 years there have been, I don't even know how many new parties, each of them claiming to be the next big thing, the next party that's gonna finally bring the change to Bulgaria. When you start with Slavy Trifonov, so there is such a people, then we continue the change. There's been a lot of others, more conservative parties showing up. It's just been a lot. It's really been a lot. You can't really pinpoint it to one thing. I think it just snowballed into this whole fiasco.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. And especially about the comment of what was it, 36% turnout. I would like to talk about that a little bit later, but we have a lot to cover. And just to get everyone on board that's either not Bulgarian or Bulgarian and is not that inclined yet, I would like to talk a bit about, let's say, the top 3 or maybe top 4 political parties that exist, because of course everyone can make an educated guess of what these parties stand for, but perhaps you can go a little bit deeper into their policies and how they got where they are, basically. And I think one of the main players in Bulgaria honestly since the fall of the Soviet Union maybe is the GERB. Could you tell us a bit more about them?
They are actually a bit newer. They're from 2006, so not quite right after the fall, not quite. But they were kind of the first party of this round of "we will change the country" parties. All the way back then. Then there was a bit of a calm before the storm until now. They came in, they wanted to bring change to Bulgaria, make us more European. Of course, they helped get us into the EU, or so they brag about it. Nowadays, their motto is safety and stability. They kind of want to position themselves as, well, you've seen what we can do. They talk about all of the projects that they've done in the past, the infrastructure projects, all of that. And they say, if you vote for us, we can have a stable government again, and we can have the country going in a direction instead of just staying in the same place. They mainly really focus on economic stability, on growth. They've been talking about some education reforms, including, for example, something that's been a big topic for a while now in Bulgaria, which is increasing teacher salaries and making them up to 125% of the average brutto salary in the country, which this has been improving a lot over the past few years. Before it was quite terrible, to be honest. What they've also started talking about now for this election cycle, I guess, is continuing the project of renovation of old socialist building blocks, because a lot of them were in disarray, to be honest.
Right.
There was a governmental program where they were funding mostly fixing their exterior, and now they want to bring it back. That's one of their promises, kind of.
All right. And okay, sure. Is there, because to me the GERB is almost synonymous with how would you say this? How would you put this lightly? I guess maybe corruption, maybe maybe a certain let's say not compatible policy with the European Union. Is there anything you can say about that, or is that just a, let's say, Western European misinformed view on the situation?
I think, I don't know if I'm living in a bubble, but at least in my bubble, it's a pretty common view of the party. I think it's also seen as, yeah, maybe they are corrupt, but they did actually do some good things also, and at least they're not pro-Russian. I think that's also a pretty common view of them.
That was my next question. Yeah, their views on, let's say, Europe wide, so not only EU, but especially their almost neighbors, Ukraine and Russia, and yeah. So, but you're saying definitely pro EU, yeah, to an extent. And
Absolutely.
then I was also wondering, do they have an explicit stance in Ukraine as well?
I think they were among those who were supporting the sending of military aid to Ukraine. Actually, yeah.
Okay.
Together
Okay.
with we continue the change, and they are definitely pro EU, pro NATO. They've been advocating for a quicker accession into Schengen, also, of course.
Right. Yeah. That's another big topic, Schengen. We'll get to that as well. All right. So that's a good introduction, first of all, and then I mean, at least on the political website, Politico website, it says DPS, Movement for Right and Freedoms, as a number 2, but I believe that's not entirely accurate anymore.
Yeah, that's a whole Pandora's box at this point, and it all really blew up in the last couple of months because DPS, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, is actually one of the oldest parties. It was formed in 1990,
Okay.
and their whole thing has been basically protecting the rights of Muslim or Turkish minorities in Bulgaria. And they call themselves centrists or liberal Democrats, depending on where you read it. But in general, they've been pro EU, pro NATO, all of that. The problem came about lately when there was some disagreement between the founder of the party, who is Ahmed Dugan, and Delan Peevski, who was leading the party while it was still one party for the last year. Who is also, by the way, I think that should be mentioned. He was, how do I call it? The Magnitsky Act. Do you know what it is? He was basically
No.
convicted. He was convicted of frauds and corruption by the U.S. government. In short.
Okay.
Anyway, there was a huge disagreement between the two, and then the party split off. Now we have the Alliance for Rights and Freedoms, so APS, which is led by the original founder of the DPS.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the DPS New Beginning, so Movement for Rights and Freedoms, New Beginning, led by Delan Peevski, which both parties were kind of created now. There was a whole thing where they both tried to sign up with the same name for the running vote. Of course, that wasn't possible, so whoever got to sign up first got to keep the DPS name, which was Delan Peevski. So now we have two parties with basically identical ideas. Kind of, if you look at their website, it's literally the same website even.
Right.
But somehow also different.
Okay. Yeah, that is quite the Pandora's box. I look at. I'll turn to the chat for a second here, and user Alex is asking, "Can someone explain what is happening in Bulgaria from someone that is not from Bulgaria?" That is exactly what we're trying to do during this live stream. So try and stay around, and hopefully you'll get some information. We have another few users all saying hello. So thank you guys for joining in. Already quite a discussion going on about who should be the next prime minister, and if that prime minister becomes the prime minister, then some might even leave the country. So it definitely divided audience that we have today, which is interesting to see. All right, but without further ado, I think it's time to talk a bit about the. Let's start with the PPDB. If I think that's the abbreviation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a coalition. Their name means We Continue the Change. That's the PP part. The other one is Democratic Bulgaria. So it's two parties that united. The Democratic Bulgaria one is older. The We Continue the Change one is one of the parties I was talking about that showed up around this whole situation, promising to bring the change, to fight corruption. Their main idea at the beginning, similarly to Slavy Trifonov's, the researcher people, was to be against the status quo and against GERB and against corruption and all of that. They wanted to bring a lot of changes to legislation. They're basically the most openly pro-EU party, I guess. I mean, a lot of them are. Their main focus point nowadays, I think, is really tackling the demographic crisis. They want to bring financial stimuli for young families in the form of tax reductions, for example, and financial support for purchasing a house. They want to provide grants for students and things like that. Here we also come to another part other than teachers. They want to work towards increasing nurses and doctors' salaries to be 90% and 125% of the average salary of the country. Currently, it's quite a lot worse than that. They're strong advocates for accession into not only into Schengen, but also into the Eurozone, which is more of a hot topic than Schengen, for example, in Bulgaria. Not everyone agrees on that. I think for Schengen, most people see the benefit in it. So they are for the accession of the euro. They still stand for fighting corruption through changes in laws, but I think that's not so much the main thing they have going anymore, so to say.
Okay, but I can imagine after the all that happened in 2020 and 2021, that fighting corruption could be a topic that's on almost every political party's agenda, or at least they say they do. Yeah,
it is. It really is. If you check all of their statements, it's all about we will make the change in Bulgaria. We'll fix corruption, and we will live in a righteous country where everyone is treated equally or whatever.
Right. yeah, exactly. Alexander Shobov, you're right. These are polls from a week ago, as you can see, October the 20th. So these are not accurate, but we have the first exit polls here. But I first want to finish with the last, I think, main political party, which is Revival, and then we'll move on to the current exit polls. So who are Revival? The one depicted in black, even an ominous color.
They're actually not that new. I was surprised. I thought, because I hadn't known of them before, let's say a couple of years ago, but they actually existed since 2014. I think how they can be described is they're more or less the combined vote of all of the many different right-wing parties that existed earlier on. Let's say 10 years ago, there was a lot more variety on that end. First, what they focus on is, again, demographic issues. I think that's a common thing that everyone knows is a problem. What they believe is that the closure of the coal plants we have, for example, so the Green Deal, they're strictly against it. They believe that that's against national interests. They also advocate for the building of a second nuclear power plant, which was a plan for quite a while we had, but was scrapped because now it was deemed not worth it. They're also actually very much against the Eurozone and the exception of the euro. They believe that that's we should keep our national currency and that otherwise our economic freedom would be taken away by the EU, even though the lev has been pegged to the euro for, I think, 20 years now.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Right.
They support stricter immigration control. And what is kind of a hot topic is that they are very much openly anti-LGBT.
Right.
They helped, or they even initiated the passing of a new law, which did end up passing, which is very much alike what laws are like in Russia lately. And it's a slippery slide. It was basically banning LGBT propaganda, as they call it, in schools. In essence, teachers weren't supposed to talk about alternative gender identification and all of that. Like they said, you can't even mention those topics. And they went even further than proposing this law and having it passed. There was this whole scandal where in Varna, which is the third biggest city, they leaked a list of 26 teachers who were they say they were pro LGBT propaganda because they were protesting against the passing of this law.
Okay.
Which is, of course, completely illegal, releasing lists of people like that.
Yeah.
They did used to be more anti-EU and more anti-NATO, I believe, in the past. I feel like now their statements have become a bit more mild when it comes to that, but they are still also, for example, propagating for the exception of a new law, which would be the anti-foreign agent law, which you might know.
I wanted to ask
Thankfully,
that
that
as well.
one,
Yeah.
that one doesn't have that much support, thankfully.
Okay.
But it is a thing they're going for.
Yeah. Also, we have a donation from one of our chatters, BGC Vitan. Thank you very much for 2 BGN, which I believe is the Bulgarian currency, actually. He says, don't forget revival being vaccinated anti-vaxxers. And he also tells me to ask you about it. It's a funny story.
Yeah, it's not the only funny story. The other funny story is related to the anti-foreign agent law I just mentioned, because it also includes that people and parties and NGOs who receive funds from abroad over, I don't know what percentage or amount would be considered foreign agents, which would actually include a lot of people from their own party. So I think they have a habit of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit here.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. that does sound funny. Right. So I think that's all clear with who these parties are. Once again, these are outdated polls, so these are not the official exit polls for the people that are watching. But the first results, or let's say the first exit polls, I think maybe there could be a better graph right now. But the article that I have is here from DW, and it says that Borisov's GERB is on course to win 25 to 27% of the vote, followed by the Reformist Coalition of PPDB, which sits at 15%, and the ultra-nationalist Revival Party at around 13%. So I think it's just interesting to hear your first thoughts about that. Any surprises? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the result of GERB wasn't surprising at all, to be honest. That's what I think everyone would have expected. Any more or less would have been surprising. For PPDB, I think I expected it to be around 16%, but it's still within the realm of what I thought. I am a bit surprised about Возражение Revival having only 13. To be honest, they've lost some percentages, which I think could be attributed to the couple of brand new other right-wing parties which have popped up, which may or may not get into the parliament this time. So maybe they lost some electorate to those.
Okay, interesting. I was a bit distracted by someone in the chat saying that, or I think it's a very funny question, but maybe we should answer it at the end of this segment. But Nerfkid asked, "Do you think that there's going to be a government after the election?" Which, in my ears, is always the answer would be yes. But maybe for Bulgaria, that is not necessarily the case. But yeah, okay. Let's hold on to that question for a bit, because of course, if we take these results, and I don't know, let's see, 26 pp, so that would be 15. Okay, so these current this website Polypro is also not the most accurate in its polls, because it's taken a poll from, I think, 4 days ago. But I think it's a very useful instrument if we want to go and look at current coalitions, which there's an incredibly long list, and probably most viewers will instantly recognize, and you as well, that none of these are realistic. But I think that they help let's say, talk about the possibilities that there are there. So with the results of how they are looking right now, which they could officially still change, right, because they're not official results, what are we thinking here in terms of coalitions? Because GERB doesn't have a majority on their own, right? Yeah, they don't.
Yeah. I think if the first one on the list happens, I don't know, I'd have to pinch myself to wake up, because that's completely impossible.
Okay, yeah.
The second one that you're looking at, the GERB, PPDB, and APS, it's actually now, with the results out, it's not going to be APS that is with more votes, but DPS. So the one with Delan Pevsky actually got more votes, which was actually surprising. I think that is more or less the only, let's say, plausible coalition that could happen.
Okay, so let's say I would like to see the live chat's reaction to this. So you say that it would be a possible coalition of PPDB,
I don't think they'll call it a coalition, though. I think it will be something else.
Let's say working together in a right way.
Yeah. Comradeship.
Comradeship, right. PPDB, you said DPS?
DPS, yeah.
And the third would be
GERB.
Okay.
I think the question here is, I think GERB and DPS would work together. The question is whether PPDB would decide to do it this time. Up until a few days ago, I don't have even considered this possible, but GERB surprisingly kind of mild on their tone. Before that, they were like, again, we'll never work with them again with PPDB, but now they're going a bit milder on it, so who knows?
Who knows? All right. So if that truly is the only option that you might be seeing with the current results, hold on before I say anything else. We have exit polls. Okay, that is quite kind of similar to what we see here. Okay. Anyways, so if that's the only real option that you see, just if that's the only option, first is how realistic is that option? So like how I know it's very difficult to predict this, so no one will let's say get angry at you if you get it wrong. But how realistic? So let's say from a scale from 1 to 10, and if that doesn't work out, are we looking at more elections again?
I hope not. I mean, it's the national sport, but I think we need a break at this point. Yeah, I mean, it is possible. It already happened. We did have a government for some time in this same situation with GERB, PPDB, and DPS. Of course, things were a bit different then, and GERB and PPDB did fall out quite a lot because of disagreements. So I think the ball really is with GERB and to some degree also PPDB and how they'll agree on working together, or whether they'll ever agree on working together. Because I think GERB and DPS they don't have much to talk about. I think their things will be fine.
Okay. All right. Well,
On the second question, if it will happen, to be honest, I don't know. And if it doesn't happen, I hope that they manage to form a government. What is the official term? Like with not party affiliated people, so like sort of like a caretaker cabinet, but just with professionals in different fields.
Okay. Right. Well, in that case, I also do kind of hope that Bulgaria gets a break from their Olympic sport, holding elections. Right. Well, I kind of want to talk a little bit about, or move the conversation up to something else, because what to me stands out a lot is almost this feeling of apathy amongst voters. Of you could see this in the low turnout rate, but I saw some interesting statistics about voter confidence, of them believing only 10% of Bulgarians believing or having confidence in the elections, that they are fair and free, or even confidence in public institutions, such as like the judiciary is like 17% only, and also EU is not, or at least not that high, relatively one of the lowest in the EU as well. So could you talk a little bit more about that? Let's start with voter turnout. What happened? Why is it so low?
Yeah, where do I even start with this whole topic? I think you are very much right. It is to a large degree apathy and belief that my vote doesn't count. Why should I even bother to go and vote? Or they'll buy votes anyway, so it doesn't matter what I vote. This has been going on for a while now. I think the real main issue is also that a lot of people vote for a savior here, or like a leader. They keep seeing new faces who promise them the world. They promise them a better country, better life, more larger salaries, whatever they want to hear, basically. And they don't really look into it anymore. They hear this, they see this person, and they're usually a charismatic person who is very persuasive, of course. And they don't read any more into their what do they actually propose to do? How do they actually want to reach these goals that they set out. So on a lot of the parties, if you visit their websites, there's really, really vague statements of what they aim to do. Like, let's say 2 sentences, oh, we want to increase salaries, or we want to reduce the burden of smaller businesses. And then you're like, oh, how do you plan to do that? Well, I don't know. I think
We'll figure it out.
that is a big problem, that a lot of people don't care to find out more. But then if you do care and you look for the information, it's very often not there. Here you could argue that there are sometimes debates, for example, that happen, but they could as well just not be happening, because they play almost no role in influencing people's decisions, I feel like, unless something very big happens, like some sort of scandal, and even then people have their minds made up beforehand.
Right.
So I think it's a closed circle. People start believing someone, then nothing changes, and then they're like, well, yeah, okay, then why should I even vote? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that is incredibly depressing. Sorry to say, it sounds very sad.
It is.
I see a few people in chat as well. We have Rewriting History. He says, hello, a Bulgarian YouTuber watching here. Welcome in the chat as well. Thank you, everyone, by the way, for joining us. It is incredible. And once again, to everyone watching, if you want to ask a question, feel free to at us, and please, we'll talk about it if we have the time. So it is great to all have you here. We have a few comments saying, a Balkan patriot with a Bulgarian flag says, EU made simple. I am telling you, no one is willing to take a side in the DPS-APS roller coaster. It is political suicide. DPS being involved in any coalition is nonsensical. I'm not sure. Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
I mean, the whole situation with DPS, even before it fell apart, was already a bit iffy since the Lampeevski came about. But I think GERB would be willing to work with them. I don't know if PPDB would be willing to swallow this this type of agreement.
Yeah, makes sense. Then Janka says, now we got to wait for the president to make a party and get 51%.
Oh, that would be amazing for sure.
if only. To go back on the topic of voting or voter turnout, and let's say, I guess, the general more electorate, this voting apathy is, I guess, the core of the issue. And you mentioned that a big part of this apathy comes from, I guess, maybe a very shallow political party, or shallow political party plans, or maybe a bit more populist rhetoric in that sense. I'm really trying to get to the root of where this apathy comes from, and if anything can be done, because, I mean, in an election, ideally, you would want to have people participating, because that's the entire idea of a democracy, right? So what can be done, or could there be a start somewhere on trying to turn this feeling around?
I'm really not sure. That's also why I'm surprised to see that this time, I mean, again, it is abysmally low, 36%.
Yeah.
But it is higher than last time, which surprises me, to be honest. And I don't know why, because I don't see much having changed in these months. It's not like years have passed. The parties keep on mostly talking about, like, in a populist rhetoric, really going into details. So I'm not sure. I would like to believe that giving more easily accessible and more detailed information to the people about what each party wants to achieve and how exactly they want to achieve it, maybe I want to believe that would help with voter turnout, but I'm not too sure. I don't know. I really don't know if it's already like a symptom that can be very hardly cured, this apathy.
No, it sounds incredibly difficult, and I imagine that, I mean, I can't be the only one that has this question, right? There must be many people trying to come up with solutions, or at least ideas to try and get more people involved, but we won't see it. Well, at least We didn't see it yet in this election. Maybe in the eighth one, there's going to be quite a bit more. Who knows?
8 times the charm.
Yeah, 8 times the charm. Exactly. All right. I think that might be a good topic to move on from, and I think it's interesting if we're talking about potential coalitions or the future. Let's say in a world where these parties can form a coalition and there is a government, what will that mean for Bulgaria's place in the EU? Because we are an EU-focused channel after all. Will this, a user in chat asks as well, PB, will this change anything European Union-wise or Schengen-wise?
Well, the parties that I believe could form a coalition are all very much pro faster Schengen full accession. They're pro Eurozone accession as soon as 2025, if not 2026. So I think if a government is formed, these processes will be sped up quite a bit. I think we could have already been in the Eurozone at least, if not in Schengen, if we had an actual proper stable government these years. I think it can help with the country's path forward together with the EU, and it can help bring some stability to the region because I mean lately, I mean not just lately but forever, there has been a lot of propaganda from Russia, I guess, in Bulgaria, which has also resulted in people not knowing what to believe anymore.
Yeah. I saw some people, or at least journalists, linking the apathy and some form of interference from outside actors, and then contributing that to how the Revival Party has rised in popularity, because it's almost that this apathy is creating a, well, let's say, very demoralized voter base, and when a party like Revival comes along, that might be a bit more attractive. What is your idea on that?
I think it's easy to draw that connection, but it might not be entirely true, because if you look at previous years, so before these 4 years, you forget about them in all of the 7 elections. If you look at percentages that other right-wing parties that were popular at the time were getting, the overall percentage of voters voting for right parties, which I need to add are 9 out of 10 times also pro-Russian parties, is around the same. So that percentage hasn't really moved. It's just that now it's more obvious because it's more or less all in one place with the Revival Party. So it seems like there has been a surge in voters, but in reality it's more or less the same. Maybe there's a small difference, but yeah.
Okay. There's a user in chat that I find left a very interesting comment. They say, as a non-voter, I can say my reasons. Not seeing a party that truly represents me and not wanting to vote for the lesser evil, quote unquote. Most people who vote do it on the lesser evil principle. Is that something that you've noticed as well? Or is that something that you don't really recognize?
It's a fair point. I think I've heard it from a lot of people. And I can see why. I think that does go back to the whole situation with the parties mainly talking about in a populist way. A lot of them talk about what they're against and not so much what they're for also.
Right.
And so it's harder to associate yourself with the party who says, okay, we're not them, than the party who says, okay, this is who we are and we want to give you this in this way. So I get it. I totally get that point. It could be a reason for the apathy. Yeah.
Okay. When it you've already mentioned it a little bit, but Russian interference, we saw it especially in elections that we've just covered in Moldova and in Georgia. These were big topics during the elections of, I mean, people being bought or other forms of fraud or intimidation during voting. Could you tell us maybe some more about, were there similar cases in Bulgaria of Russian or any other outside interference for that matter, or any other forms of, let's say, non-standard procedures at voting stations?
Yeah, I mean, with non-standard procedures at voting stations, you hear that every time. And now that it's happening this often, the voting, you hear it pretty often. For example, suspiciously some machines malfunctioning or something happening. But I think in general it's been on a not that big of a scale.
Okay.
And I can also say the same for the Russian influence. It is present for sure. I mean, you can see it in the policies of some of these parties and the way that some people think about some topics. It is very much aligned with the official Kremlin way of talk. Even some of the laws, for example, the anti-LGBT law and those things. But I do think it is, then again, not as effective as it probably was in Moldova or Georgia.
Okay.
Because again, the percentages that these parties are getting hasn't really changed a lot in the past decades.
So you would say definitely it might have happened, but definitely on a way lower scale. That it did not influence it that much.
I think it happened for sure, but it is not as big of a threat as it could be.
Interesting. I mean, I instantly think or ask the question why to myself, but that might have something to do with still being in the EU might help you slightly protecting yourself against these foreign influences. Yeah. Okay. There's a question from the chat and one that you can answer a lot better than I can. Wait, let me find it again. There was a question about BSP. Yeah, here we go. Can you talk a bit about the demise of BSP, asks Lewis7, and where their policies stand these days?
Yeah, I was thinking of talking about them, and I was actually thinking of calling it a rebranding, sort of, not a demise. Okay. But I guess you can also call it that if you look at the picture in in a longer time span. They really did crash and burn straightforward. Their percentages have gone down to 6%, I think it is 6.5%, 7% maybe, and they used to be either the second or the first party for a while. Then they were second or third, and then these past 5, I mean even 10 years, they've just been going down and down and down.
Yep.
Now the keg final exploded. They kind of blamed it on the previous leader of the party. They voted her out, and now they're doing this rebranding. It's quite obvious on their website, for example. It's way less outdated, I guess. They're trying to be like a typical European left party.
Right.
They're actually one of the parties that have the longest, the most extensive list of decisions and things they want to achieve, which was interesting for me to see, because before I think it was also always just populist, broad statements that don't mean much. They are, for example, they're a bit of a mixed bag. I think they also used to be way more pro-Russia, not necessarily anti-EU, but still pro-Russia. Now they're, for example, similar to Vozrozhdeny, they are against the Green Deal and the closing of the coal plants here in the Stara Zagora region. They've been strictly against sending military help to Ukraine, but at the same time, they've been really supporting the full accession into Schengen because they believe, it can help us with economically and also on a personal level. And they also talk about, for example, tackling the demographic crisis through financial help for young families, for the purchase of a new home, or things like that. So they've kind of rebranded. I feel like they're changing the rhetoric because they saw that, they were losing a lot of electorate. So now they're trying something new. I can't really talk a lot about them because it's happened only recently. But the old BSP is gone pretty much.
Okay. If you permit me a few seconds here, I'm very curious to see what our current viewers have voted for or would have voted for, because there's quite a bit of discussion. So let me type this poll really quickly. This goes out mainly to the Bulgarians, of course, in the chat. Although I saw a user called Paul from Chicago. I'm sure you would like to. How would I even? Okay, revival. I'm not gonna put in the Bulgarian names. You're gonna have to forgive me. So that would be PPDB. We have BSP. I mean, how would I even put in DPS now if it's like a?
You can put DPS and APS.
Okay, yeah. I see that this vote. Okay, DPS, APS. Ladies and gentlemen, this poll only allows me to start or ask 4 options. So if you voted for anything below the first top 4 parties, I'm sorry. Sorry, BSP voters, ITN. I mean, there's some parties that we haven't really talked about, but they're unsure of coming into the parliament anyways, right?
Yep.
Instantly, I see many PPDB. Actually, 21% for revival. Very interesting. 12% GERB, but the vast majority is PPDB, 70%. Cool, good to know. Anyways, sorry for a little side information there. You've spoken already about many different political party agendas, and that they're rather broad, and certain policies that they would like to implement, although in broad terms. I wonder, are these topics that they've been branding, are these big amongst the Bulgarian population as well, or would you say that there are clear topics that aren't necessarily really being talked about by the population or by the political parties that are an issue or not? Is there a disconnect, basically, is what I'm asking, between what political parties are selling or trying to sell themselves as and the issues amongst the Bulgarian population? I mean, according to, in your view, of course.
I think in general they are circling around the topics that people are also talking about, at least from what I've seen. For example, the demographic crisis is something that everyone knows about, whether there's 60 or 6 here. It's been a thing for since socialism fell, basically. Although now lately it has started to get better, in my opinion. Of course, it's a biased opinion, but more people returning from abroad, me included. And also the birth rate actually rose, which is insane for Europe.
Yeah,
unheard of.
that is really unheard of. Yeah.
Otherwise, topics like increasing the wages, they've been a hot topic. I mean, of course, for example, for teachers, for doctors and nurses, everyone knows, especially for doctors and nurses, that they've had very, very low wages for the longest time. So I think it is an important topic for people. Also, of course, the raising of the minimum wage is something that they always talk about, a good change that they made, or at least good according to a lot of people, not so much the business conglomerates, from what I've heard, is the raising of the minimum wage to make it be 50% of the annual average wage, basically. So that is something that all of them also talk about actively, more or less. Education is another hot topic that has been talked about everywhere because people are unhappy with it.
I found it interesting, but like the you said at the beginning of the live stream that those wages went up drastically, right, compared to the average. I found that very, very, or at least normally you don't really hear that across most of Europe, that education is such a hot topic. It's mostly always, the standard topics of immigration or some security debate or like cost of living, that kind of stuff. But is there a particular reason for education being a hot topic in Bulgaria?
It's not just one reason, to be honest. The first reason is
multiple.
The general consensus is that the system is quite outdated. They're publishing new books to use now, but they're basically the same methodology that was used 30 years ago. So not much has changed. It's a lot of broad topics without going into detail. So that's something that they might want to change. But let's not get into that. Another big problem is the fact that I can't say the exact percentage, maybe someone can check it, but a big percentage of teachers currently are actually already in retirement age or approaching retirement age. So that is something that is basically a powder keg that if it's not addressed, then in a decade or less, we'll have a huge shortage of teachers. It's already happening, for example, in maths and physics and chemistry. I think there was there wasn't enough teachers basically this year, so they had to call back some people who had already retired and kind of ask them to come and teach because there's no one to do it in some smaller towns. So that's why they're raising the salaries to kind of make it a more desirable profession, basically. I don't know if it's working. I do have one friend who became a teacher last year, but I think it is definitely a necessary step because otherwise it's a bomb.
Yeah. Education is, clearly is important, right? It's the next generation is being brought up, and interesting. It's very great to hear that perspective, because I wouldn't have known at all otherwise. There's a few comments that are have a little less to do with the Bulgarian elections, and I want to address them really quickly. P-Beat asks, not related to Bulgaria, but what are your opinions on the Georgian elections and the upcoming Hungarian elections? We did a live stream, I believe, 3 days ago on the Georgian election. So if you want to hear some thoughts and another very interesting interview, please make sure to check that out. Villa says, guys, make sure to check out the EUMS Discord in the description. And that is a very good thing to say, because we do have a very lively a community on Discord, always debating, always chatting about European politics. So if that's something that interests you, please make sure to join. And then finally, Terminatora12 asks, do you think that a Mario Draghi-style government is a possibility? And I'm not quite sure what you mean with a Mario Draghi-style government. I know Mario Draghi, of course, but I wouldn't really know how that translates into a Bulgarian government. And also Paul from Chicago asked, what are your views on the upcoming US election? I will not address that right now. We're talking about Bulgaria, guys. Come on, we need some questions about the Bulgarian elections. Anyways, what I can tell you is that there's going to be a great live stream on that next week. So keep your eyes out on that. Anyways, that's all out of the way. I think I covered most topics because you made such concise and to the point answers. Sometimes our guests like to talk around the questions a little bit, but yeah, and generally we're almost through our time anyways. So I think that's a very good place to end it. And as a last thing, I would like to ask you, is there anything that you would like to say? Any wish, any shout out? Basically, anything that you want to share with the audience right now. The floor is yours.
Yeah, basically, I hope that the 7th time was the charm, so we don't need an 8th time being the charm.
Yeah.
But if there is an 8th time, do go and vote, because your vote does matter. Because if everyone thinks that their vote doesn't matter, only the paid votes matter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, shout out to EU&U if anyone's watching.
Of course. Yep.
And thank you so much for having me on here tonight.
Yep. It was a pleasure, and I think it can speak for all the viewers as well that they had a great time. Also, I will make sure to put the link, I think, to your Instagram, because that is the largest, I believe, platform that you have as EU&U. I'll make sure to do that tomorrow morning once I edit this video a little bit. There's a few more questions unrelated. Elliot, is it possible to have more than one guest on at a time? Yes, that is possible, but it is also quite difficult sometimes to find more than one guest. Believe me, guys, I'm trying my very best. If you have any suggestions, please make sure to find me either on Discord or send us an email on our EU Made Simple YouTube channel. Or someone is asking me, who would I vote for? I don't have. I probably don't know enough to say that. Probably, I saw that PPDB is very, very at least popular amongst our viewers, so could probably look into that, but I have no idea. I wouldn't say that. Anyways, people are saying great stream, guys. Thank you, Martin. Have a great day. So without further ado, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Martin, thank you for being here, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.